Welcome to Grow My Etsy Shop podcast, the drips of knowledge you need to start growing. Hey, welcome. So today we're going to be talking about how to get your business in like gift guides and blogs and YouTube videos. Like what's the way that we can get the right contacts to be able to do that, get the work done without feeling like it's a full-time job, and then, reap the benefits from correct pitches and just kind of how to get your emails read and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give a shout out really quick. So some of this content comes from someone actually in the Next Level program. We were talking about it yesterday, and we do like office hours, and we had a room full of people yesterday, and we were chatting, and he asked the question about it, and then I was like, hey, let's just talk about it in our one-on-one, because we had a one-on-one coming up, and then he was like, someone else in the group was like, actually, I am curious about this, and so then it sparked a discussion, and Steve had some good things to share, and so I'll make sure to give credit to Steve when I share those things. So let's jump into this. So obviously, the pros to being seen in content. It's not just for eyeballs, right? Which is when people read blogs or watch videos or whatever it may be, you can be seen in that, and that's obviously good for your business. But the other side that's good is this, it's called backlinking, which is essentially that you get more credibility because your links are being found in other places. It's a way that Google knows that you're legit. So like if you create a website and you're like all fancy and whatnot, how does Google know that you are actually a great website that people are going to enjoy? Well, if people share your website or they have it linked on their website to go to your stuff, that's a big indicator to Google that, hey, you are something special. And so these backlinks are a great thing to be collecting, especially if you plan on being in business for a long time, because you can just kind of have the snowball effect where, you're being seen in different things, you're being found from different websites, you're receiving different traffic sources into your kind of main hub of where you are, and it's really great for that. So this is a great practice just to be doing in general, which is sharing your content so that other people can feel or other people can put your content on their content, and now you're kind of creating this web that's great for your SEO. Now, the first thing you want to do is you sort of want to line out what it is that you want to be seen under. So there's kind of the big ones are obviously magazine or print, and then there's blogs, there's influencers, there's YouTube videos, there's Instagram posts, there's kind of these things that you can take advantage of. Let me share my takeaway. I think that everyone would think it's very cool to be in magazines. In my glory days of being an Etsy shop owner, one of my competitors was in a magazine. And when I say one of my competitors, I mean one of the people who jacked my product and stole my idea, then got featured in a magazine. And I was like ticked out of my mind, as you can imagine, when I saw her advertising this. And I was like, I got to be in a magazine. So I started being aggressive in what I was doing, and I ended up paying to be in a magazine. I paid for like a spread in a baby magazine that I was doing, and it did squat. It did not increase my business at all. I don't think, realistically, and I do know this. I guess I was just leading with passion as opposed to my logic, but in print, it takes several touch points to really get something. So like I used to work for a coupon book, and our whole pitch to them was like, you need to kind of sign up for multiple issues because you don't really feel the effects until, you're 6 months in or whatever it may be. So it's if you're wanting to be in print so that you can flex, like, which is a completely great reason to be in print. It's a great way to flex. It's a great way to say we were in this magazine. You place that right on your website. There's a lot of credibility to that. That's a really cool thing. But once that wave sort of passes, right? Once it's a year old or whatever, it's like you can still have the badge of honor, but is the actual content doing you any good? No. So you essentially pay for, or in some cases can be just featured for free if you do this, and that's kind of the stuff we'll be talking about. But it's a badge of honor that you essentially get, you can post, and that's really going to be the most value that you get from print, in my experience. Maybe someone else has a different experience, but that was my experience. Where I feel like things can do more reach is when you're found via online. And the reason for that is that people can search for things, and they're not necessarily restricted to having a magazine that they then have to go through and see your particular ad or your product in there. this can be more done from a search standpoint. I'm looking for something, or I choose to follow these videos, or I choose to follow these blogs, and this person who I trust is writing about this particular product. And so I tend to lean more that direction. It's a easier, the entryway is much more open, I find, and the longevity of being online is better for your SEO, and I think you'll just get more touch points throughout time than you would on print. So this is where we jump in with Steve, my friend Steve, in the Next Level program. So because they started talking about getting a list. In fact, Lexi, what's up, Lexi? She asked, hey, how do you get a list? How does this even work? I don't even know how to contact people. And he said, so this comes from Steve. He's like, hey, I use Reddit, which, keep in mind, Google has recently made a deal with Reddit. They're using Reddit to really build their AI and whatnot. And so you're going to start seeing Reddit posts much more prevalent in search. As you search for things, answers from Reddit are going to be more at the top than they typically were. And side note, back to the subject at hand. So he said, I go into Reddit threads and or subreddits, and there's lots that have virtual assistants who have these skill sets to be able to find, these gift guides or these bloggers or these YouTubers that you can essentially they can extract and get you that information. So here were some of the ones that he gave. Now, one of them is politically incorrect, and I'm a little nervous saying it on my podcast, but one is called it's called slave labor. And so if you just go to Reddit and go to the subreddit of slave labor, you're going to find that there's lots of VAs there that can, again, what an atrocious name, but you can find VAs for. So in Steve's case, he said he spent $10 for a list of people that he could contact. So that kind of gives you the price range of what that workload is. Lexi asked the question, which I think is a legit question. She's like, how did you pay them? And he said, well, I'll walk you through his what he shared. This is what he said. He said, I reached out and on these posts. And so one was like virtual assistants, slave labor, this kind of stuff. And he posted, hey, this is what I'm looking for. So he essentially wrote out. He said, I asked for examples. So I want you to bring me people that you think would be a good fit for my product. Okay, so that what he's doing is he's testing the water for this. He said, most people wrote me back and said they'd be interested and love to do it. Only a handful or a small amount of people actually brought in examples. And so he said, once I saw someone bring in the examples of like, yes, that's the type of person I'd be looking for, he then said, great, I want to work with you. He connected with this person and they went and created a list. And then when they were done creating the list, they messaged him. It took about 2 or 3 days. They messaged him and he said, great. And he sent him a PayPal link and they sent him the link. And so it was $10. He got his stuff and everything was good. So that was his experience in that. That's not something I have experience in necessarily. I tend to use software when I do it, but this is a much cheaper route than the software that I pay for. So that's a good option for people on a budget. Okay, so I paused this because I was going to look at my notes and so that we can have a very cohesive, which reminded me that some people leave reviews about me about that I'm kind of all over the map and that I jabber on about stuff. And so I'm trying to be a little bit more concise with the way I'm speaking, which then reminded me, I haven't really looked at my reviews in a while. Maybe I'm still getting roasted. So I went and looked at my review and some dude compared me, go read my latest review on Apple. He compared me to talking to his favorite sister. So thanks. Anyway, all right, back to the subject at hand. So once you have your list, the next question then becomes, how do I pitch to this list? And so one of the things I do want to mention, this was the advice I gave to the Next Level group when we were talking, is I was like, listen, you need to do it. It is very difficult to find a VA that's going to do this correctly. And so because what are they going to do? They're going to copy and paste it, kind of a generic message. I get them all the time. It's because I have a YouTube channel and all this kind of stuff. I get VA stuff that reach out. People want to be guests on my podcast all the time. And anyway, it's not done very well. And so I think it's a much better strategy to sniper than it is to machine gun this approach. And so meaning that you're going to select ones that you want and put more tailored messages in those as opposed to generic it out. So I say, hey, for you, take this in internally. This is something that you should be doing as the business owner, reaching out and connecting with these people so that you can get them in. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. So 2 or 3 years ago, I was with a friend that I do marketing with, and she's into kind of PR and all that kind of stuff, and I was into something else. And so we would just like go into our different conference rooms or whatever. And then at one of the times, I just was like, I'm done. And she's like, hey, come with me, sit in this thing with me, and then we'll go hang out. So I was like, cool. That could sound like I'm having a secret affair with her. She's like 50 years older than me. So before you're like, whoa, Jerry, what are you doing on your weekends? Like, anyway. So and she would be devastated if she heard me say that she's 50 years older than me. She's not 50 years older than me. She's 60 something. I'm not 10. Okay, back to this. So I went and sat in this PR thing with her, and I actually went through my notes as I was preparing for this podcast, because I remember there were some things that kind of stood out to me and resonated with me. And this is what my notes said. The first thing right at the top, I wrote, pitch early, pitch often. That's what this teacher was talking about. She's a PR person. The reason she talked about this is she said timing has a lot to do with this stuff. And so, yes, if someone has everything that they need and all this kind of stuff and you are pitching them something, they're not really interested. However, they're always looking for new things to create. A content creator is looking for things to create. So you have to present them something that they can create. Now I'm going to get further into this with some of my Jared twist to what this PR girl is saying a bit later. But for the meantime, that's what we need to think. It's if we don't hear from someone, that doesn't mean no. It just means the timing isn't correct. If we hear back, no, thank you, or stop contacting me, that's where, okay, we got to know. But a non-response is just bad timing or a bad pitch. So from your perspective, you want to look at, these YouTube creators, these bloggers, these people who have influence or even PR, magazine editors or whatever it may be. And this is another note that she had in here. She was saying, I get pitched all the time why their product is great. And I don't want to open up my emails every day and read why someone else thinks their product is great, or why, when I say someone else, it's like, even when they're like, well, look, like Donald Trump style, when he's like, everybody tells me I had the best economy. Like, you don't want to say, everybody tells me I make the best purses, write about me. You instead want to connect with the individual who's reading the email. So her whole thing was find the interest in the person you're connecting and connect the product to them. That's the difference between someone who's willing to endorse a product or write about a product or be excited about your product and not. They don't care that everybody loves your product. They don't care that you love your product. Help them see why your product connects with them. And so if you can find someone who has a similar interest, and then you can connect that interest to say, look, this is my product, fulfills a lot of what your interest is or the things you do care about. So she said, move away from your readers will like and move towards, hey, I think you would like. And she says, if that's what sparks that interest. It's what makes me say, yeah, I kind of do. Obviously you link to the product, all that kind of stuff. She mentioned, I have this in my notes as well. She said, like, if you don't have bad photography, if you don't have good photography, she's like, forget about it. Like, photography is everything. So if you're going to get into this world, you have to have above average photography. That is what's going to make these people excited. They are a visual platform. Whether it's YouTube video, whether it's a blog, whether it's a magazine, we want very beautiful visuals. And so present us beautiful visuals and you've made our job way easier. So another thing worth noting. The term that she used, and I wrote down in my notes here as well, is she said, charming. She said, don't try to impress me. Just be charming. You're human on the other side. She mentioned this is kind of a black hat technique, but she said, like, if you say like, hey, I don't normally do this, or like, I haven't reached out to anyone ever before about this. She's like, that's the kind of verbiage that works because it feels the diamond in the rough and this connection and this human connection that's taking place in what you're doing. And so obviously a VA is going to miss this mark if you have a VA go through and try to do this. So from your perspective, it's better that you're doing it and that you're sort of using that sniper approach where you're learning about the person and then connecting with the person. So yeah, if they are a vegetarian, for example, and you sell, a vegan, I guess would be a better way to say that, a vegan, and you sell a vegan product, or your product doesn't harm any animals or whatever, like that's the connection that you can make in what they're doing. So now let's bring this into Jared's world. So a lot of this, you go to a PR thing, they're speaking to a big group and they're kind of giving you these pointers. And so these pointers are great. And I'm sure as you've gone through this podcast, you've like, okay, this is a good mindset. This is a good idea. But then what I try to do is we try to go a little bit deeper with our roots and say like, what is going to actually work? Like, what's the thing that's going to make us different? What's our actual strategy instead of just be charming? So I've thought about it, and this is sort of what I would do, or I think would be a really great approach in getting something like this to work. So the number one thing I think we need to think about is that just because I write, let's just say I have a blog and I write towards a specific person, that doesn't mean that my product has to appeal to that person. So let me give you an example. If I have a blog about men who have beards, and I'm like all about beard care and all that kind of stuff, you may think, well, if I sell a feminine product, I can't, what's the point of me reaching out to this person, right? Because his readers are all men. So again, gift guide, right? This is what we're thinking about. We're thinking about getting into Q4. Do those men have other interests, meaning, or people that they need to buy gifts for? Do they? And so, yes, they do, is the answer to this. So you can actually tap into audiences that you may think aren't applicable to you because they will buy for their spouse. Now, this is going to snowball into what I want to talk about. I believe the best thing that you can do is create the content for the content person. So, for example, let's go with our beard guy. If I'm a feminine product, what I can do is create a gift guide, meaning I curate 5 to 10 different shops that are going to be perfect gifts for these men's wives. Did I say that right? These men's wives. And then I bring that to the content creator. Because again, if I'm the content creator and someone's messages me and is like, let me tell you why my product is great. No. I'm like, don't care. But if you say, hey, I've already curated a guide or a gift guide for you, and then you want to come up with a crafty headline for that gift guide. So for example, you could say, I've already curated, I've got 15 shops or products that are perfect to, the perfect way for you to win Christmas, because, men are competitive and always want to win Christmas. Perfect way for you to win Christmas for under $30. So now you have a link that brings them to this guide that they look at. It's already done for them. They're literally looking at this guide and they're like, oh yeah, this is really great. You've saved me hours of work of going through and finding these things. Sure, maybe I want to flip one or two things or change some things, and you would say in your email, like, you're welcome to take this, you can use it, you can flip it out or whatever it may be, but these are some things I've created for you and whatever, and here's the link to my own personal product. If you want to discuss more about that, if you need anything else from me, let me know, type thing. That, I believe, is a winning strategy. I believe that if you were to create the guide, write it out, send it to them with a crafty headline. And I think the crafty headline is sort of key here. And I love anything with the title that, has a money amount, or like, I like to make a promise, right? So like, you're going to win Christmases. Here's the top 5 gifts that will have you win Christmas for just under $30. Like, that kicker is what makes headlines work really well. And so I would kind of look at it and crafting your stuff this way, instead of just being like, beautiful gifts for Christians. I would try to say, inspire your loved ones with these 10 Christian themed gifts. And then you would include your product in that lot. Now, make sure that when you make this pitch, that you link to your own product. We don't want to just bury our stuff in there. We want to make sure to say like, hey, this is our product. And that's your time to then sort of go into the why the readers will care at that point. So once you make that initial connection, like, hey, I was going through your blog stuff, I was looking at some things, I can see that you're into XYZ. My product represents or is also, or I am also into XYZ. This is what I tried to accomplish with my product is similar to what yours. So everyone has deep down in themselves, whether they know it or not, a why to what they do, and you're trying to connect on that why. you then say, I actually have curated a gift guide that I think follows within that why that you have, editor or content creator or YouTube videoer. And here is this list and this dope headline that I have that kind of goes with this. Feel free to use it or to make any edits that you want to do. Here's a link to my specific product that I have if you want to check this out. And then I think the key to that is to just sort of start to move forward. You just start to say, let me know if you need anything else from me for this, to make this gift guide work for your readers or whatever it may be. And then sign off there. Now, this is where the follow-up can come in. Because if you don't hear, it's like what I was saying before, it doesn't mean that they're not interested. Your timing just not be right. So keep going, keep following up. And this is where if you do want to have a VA, you can allow a VA to do follow-ups for you and whatnot. But my thought process is that the average of us are not trying to, a lot of people get funded in startups and then they try to use PR and whatnot. They get a team, they have an agency, and they go out and they just try to build. None of us, I assume, have an agency that's doing our PR for us. So where it's you, I believe in a more sniper approach and to start reaching out to these creators, these content creators, probably a month ago, but this month is better than last month or better than the next month. So start reaching out to them and just saying like, hey, this is my pitch, this is what we do, and see if you get yourself featured in some stuff. And what that does is that gives you content that now you can share, you can be involved in things, and then it gives you this relationship with these people. And so that's another thing that's really nice, is that you have this relationship that can take place. Keep in mind, you can do this in DMs, you can do this in YouTube comments, you can do this in blog. Oh, I had one more point. Should I bring it up? I'm going to bring it up. So, okay, I feel like this podcast is a little bit longer, but let's do this. So I used to work for this, I had this client, we'll say. I had this client that I worked for years and years and years and years. And he had an organic chat team. Essentially, it got a lot of his leads from, he had these Facebook groups and these things, and he would just kind of like DM people all the time. He had these trained employees that were doing this for him. And they would go through this thing. And they had this thing that when they wanted to get connected with certain people, I can't remember the terminology. It was more crafty than what I'm going to say. But it was essentially like comment on a different platform, pitch was sort of the formula that they followed, which means they would leave a comment on a YouTube video. Let's just say they're a YouTuber. They'd leave a comment on the YouTube video. They'd say something nice about the person. People love nice comments about themselves. And then they wait a little bit. And on a new video, maybe the next day or 2 days later, they leave another comment on that video for what they're, a nice thing, whatever it may be. They then take it to a different platform. So now they're in their Instagram a couple days later, and they comment on their Instagram post. So it's comment, new platform, comment. So you're essentially doing 3 comments, 2 in one platform, 1 in another, and then they reach out with an email to say, hey, I've been falling in love with your stuff, and yada, 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 yada. I've learned more about you. I can see you're really into XYZ, XYZ. I don't normally make these pitches to everyone, but I thought, what a better match than this, because we both have this core value about us. And so I think this is going to work. Here's my thing. It's $30 gift guide for people who XYZ. It's already curated for you. Feel free to use it. If you need anything else from me, love to hear from you. Bye. There's your pitch. So that's another strategy. If you feel like you're not hearing a whole lot, if you're like sending out these emails, like, gosh, I'm not hearing anything. Try the comment, other platform comment. Again, they had a much cooler name. I can't remember, but comment, other platform comment, pitch. And that tends to warm up the person who's receiving something from you. Nobody wants to be rude to a fan. Okay. Till next week.